can speak to the president. I worked for a president. I've worked with community boys that are agitating in the grassroots. Confidence is the key. And we don't necessarily live in a climate where people like confident people. I'm going to be very honest. Nigerians don't really like confident people. I learned it the hard way, but then once you wake up and you say, I'm not apologizing for who I am and what I am, you begin to enjoy life to the fullness of it. So maybe you may have been bullied, and because you've been bullied, then you tell yourself, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't talk to people, I don't like people. That's a lie. You're naturally a gatherer, and that's probably how the Lord has created you too. But because of the experience, you believe the lie, you become the lie. So when people tell me, oh, I just went there, and I said, no, you may think you went to the school, but the school probably went through you. You went through the process of what the school has offered.
Hi, Jen. It's so good to have you on the Education Effect. And I'm really excited to have you actually because you've had such an interesting experience. I know that you've lived in different countries and I feel like I'm sure that it would be really interesting to find out more about your experience and whether you think that this has contributed to who you are today. But for those who don't know who you are, do you want to just give like a brief intro?
Thank you so much, Danielle. My name is Jennifer Silva-Pierce. I am the founder of UMAP Nigeria, an NGO that focuses on social responsibility. So we teach young people how to care and how to give back, basically in summary. And apart from that, I am also a minister. I run a foundation ministry called Montessori Global. So I basically travel around the world, preach the gospel. We have a lot of people around the world that we work with. We do crusades, evangelism, teachings. And then my new favorite one is I am a coach. I'm an author. So I've written 2 books, which focus on my singles ministry and my prayer ministry. And then for coaching is more like identity coaching, C-level executive, strategy, business, and all that good stuff. And it's called Etsa Chokma, which in Hebrew means wise counsel. So that's all I'm really doing right now.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much. Honestly, it's so good to know Jen personally. She's a prophetess, she's a minister, a woman of God, doing great things across the globe. It's not even in one location. I'm really excited to have this conversation. So my first question for you is, looking back at your schooling experience, would you say that your education, your schooling experience contributed to who you are today and your success? Or would you say it's something else?
I would definitely say yes, because one thing about school is that school centers you, not only with education, but with experience. I call school like the center of experiential learning, because in school, not only do you learn, you interact. And there's nothing that we can't express if we don't actually go through the process of it. So when people tell me, oh, I just went there, and I said, no, you may think you went to the school, but the school probably went through you. You went through the process of what the school has offered, whether it was the people, the teachers, the extracurricular activities, and I will tell you, as far back as like elementary school, I can pick and choose certain things that have attained to my character, even in high school, secondary school, and in, of course, college. So I would say that school definitely has a huge part to play in our, formation and all of that. Yeah.
I love that. I love what you just said about experiential learning and looking at all of it as learning and not just basically what your teacher told you in the class. Do you feel like that perspective, you have that because you're looking at it from hindsight? Or did you have that even when you were in school? You had this perspective as a young Jennifer? Or was this now looking back more mature?
I think it's a bit of both. So I'll give you an experience, right? So in high school, the library was a huge part of my life. I would go and wallow there in books and books for hours while maybe we had free periods. And luckily for us, our proprietress, Lady Cherry, was not Nigerian. She's Jamaican. So she came with this understanding of things like the civil rights movement, things like women in power, men in power, African revolution, Pan-Africanism. So imagine going to the library in maybe just 2, which we call grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. And you're reading about Marcus Garvey. You're reading about people like MLK. You're reading about Nelson Mandela. Then we also even met Nelson Mandela. I'll never forget the opportunity I had where I basically had the opportunity to go and actually not interview him, but I had the opportunity to stand and welcome him as a student. And that was amazing. That was utmostly amazing. So it also encouraged me to understand that education was the only thing. So I even remember the opportunity we had to meet Mandela's wife as young students who welcomed her in the airport, the local Benin airport. I'll never forget.
Wow.
And I remember that experience with Winnie made me think, you know what, Jen, there's so much more beyond school. There's so much more beyond high school. There's so much more beyond you. And I want to be like Winnie Mandela. That never left me. I
Mm,
was just maybe 13, 14 when that
wow.
happened, but it stuck to me. It really did. 13, that stuck to me. So imagine those experiences. You know, there's more. At my school, like my high school, now I look back at it, I have to give it, a lot of tips in the Canadian Education Center. We did things like social, it was like a social day. They called it the Arts Festival. So they would make us do things like making of hair, fashion shows, both cultural and modern, fashion displays. We had to cook, we had to form choirs, solos, duets. It was amazing. So I went to a school that gave me that output and thinking. And to be honest, I'm really grateful now. I look back at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And that's very unique. So I want you to take us back right to when you were in, primary school, secondary school. Tell us the types of schools that you went to. And yeah.
So for elementary school, that's why also my nursery, or what we call like kindergarten and preschool, was in the city called Port Harcourt.
Mhm.
And in this city, we were quite mixed when it came to class of people. So we had a lot of like middle class people, upper
Okay.
class, and also some people that were like inner city, that kind of what I call it income bracket for their parents. And the beautiful thing about it was that the mixture kind of was always from the beginning. So I was always privileged to be in schools where all kinds of classes of people were, but there was one thing about those schools, quality. So it showed you that
Mm,
every class of person wants quality. And in elementary school was where I really understood like confidence. It was a school that, it really allowed us to interact with each other. The education was really great. The name of the school was Montessori International School, MIS, in Port Harcourt. It's still there.
mm,
The proprietress,
mm,
she's still amazing. I really appreciated what I had because I was really prepared for what we call the common entrance, which is the exams you take. So high school. And then when I got to high school, like I mentioned in my previous discussion, the Canadian Education Center kind of like just amplified what I had come with. It amplified the fact that I already had confidence. So I was already coming to school as a confident, outbursty, kid that was ready to, just go for it. And I really had a good time. I mean, then I wouldn't say it was a good time because we were in boarding school, right? But looking back at
mm,
it, that was where my formative years really like formed. You know how people always say your friends in high school are the friends you make for life? It's not a joke,
mm,
right? These are the
mm.
people that actually like, I won't even say like hold you accountable, but the peer groups are what you learn. Even when you peer group with people that are much more smarter than you, much more qualified, you learn that topic, right? Or whether that statement when people say, best have flock together, remember
Yeah.
that is saying, yeah. And the truth is that school, nobody really tells kids go for the best. You can go for the best of your peers. When
Mm,
you see people that are smart and you be their friends, don't go and compete or compare. Just go and learn, take it all in. So I was that kind of person that was everybody's friend. So I was learning from everybody. And I noticed that people
mm,
that isolated themselves and maybe kept to themselves, or even maybe because of home upbringing and home experiences, because the home is where the first social experiment really goes through.
mm.
When you study things like social studies, it tells you that the home is the first base of socialization.
Yeah.
But what people don't tell you is that even when you come out of that socialization, you're meant to upgrade, you're meant to elevate, you're meant to expand more. But because I have a teachable spirit, I enjoyed school because I knew that these
Mm,
people were not a mistake. Me coming across them was not a mistake. Fun fact, I learned how to speak Pidgin in secondary school. I didn't grow up in a house we
mm,
spoke Pidgin. Yeah. So I learned how
mm.
to speak Pidgin in secondary school because of those were friends. I just like, wow, that's cool. I want to be like, I
Yeah.
want to be like that. I just have little interesting things. But school is a good ground for socialization, especially when the
Mm,
child is teaching. And I think I learned
mm.
that from my parents. So my parents are teachable people. Even within their social circles, I saw positive energy and interaction. I learned positive interaction early. I think that's what I want to base it on. So I knew that whenever I meet people, whether in school, especially in school, I should experience people. And I think if you look at it,
Mm,
people that experience people live a more diverse
li-
life. And I think
mm,
even as an educationist, like that's one thing I always beg people, like school experience and the fullness of that experiment has to do with the child's willingness to take. We're believers. It's easy for me to give that scripture. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when you even hear a child speak, you hear the way a child communicates, you can know what they've taken into their hearts. And when you look at social children that love school, you know people that love school. You know people that
Mm-hmm.
experience school. You know people that took
Yeah.
school in. So that's really where that base, of
That's
formation is for
amazing.
me. Yeah.
So you started off, you said Port Harcourt, which is in Nigeria, for those watching that
Southern Nigeria.
that don't
Southern
know,
Nigeria.
Southern Nigeria. And you spoke about Montessori education, and it's quite interesting because I only learned
Mm.
about Montessori education maybe the last couple of years,
Oh wow.
because obviously I was in a British kind of curriculum. I know that Montessori, they really allow children to kind of learn and discover.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not kind of teacher led; it's more student
It's like
led
it's
and.
like it's like what we call pedagogy. I was
Mm,
experienced to go with one of my mentors to Finland when she was going to go
mm,
learn about the education system that she wanted to bring into her own kingdom and her community. And I will tell, like, I always even say, like, one of the best experiences I've ever had because when you see what pedagogy was originally created to do, you love
yeah,
it. It's to give the child experiential learning.
so
If I
good.
was to have a high school, I would heavily base my high school off experiential learning.
And so for you, when you were a child, you were going into, like you said, a primary school, middle class, you were with different types of classes, and you were just somebody that was able to kind of network with people. Can you talk a little bit more about your character naturally? Also, when you said about confidence, do you feel like your school developed that confidence, or do you feel like that was something that was just innate, birthed, the way that God wired you?
So I'm very big on experience, as you can tell. And I think it's really a mixture of both. That's why even when I preach, I tell people you may not even be an introvert the way you think. It might be a social experience that formatted a lie and then it became a lens that you started seeing life through,
Right.
right? So maybe you may have been bullied, and because you've been bullied, then you tell yourself, "Oh, I'm an introvert. I don't talk to people. I don't like people." That's a lie. You're
Mm,
naturally a gatherer, and that's probably how the Lord has created you too. But because of the experience, you believe the lie, you become the lie. So luckily
mm,
for me, I always took in every experience I had as a child. So I would learn to remove the one I don't want, keep the one I don't want, do with the information what you please, do with the
mm,
experience what you please. And in the beauty of the going through what we go through, I just learned that, confidence is the key. And we don't necessarily live in a climate where
mm.
people like confident people. I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to shift it a little
Yeah.
bit. Nigerians don't really like confident people. I learned it the hard way, but then
Mm.
once you wake up and you say, I'm not apologizing for who I am and what I am, you begin to enjoy life in the fullness of it.
Did you feel like you belonged when you were in school, or did you feel like you were
Sometimes
quite different?
in seasons I did belong, but then remember I told you that I was that girl. In fact, one of my best friends from high school were the same. We were everybody's friends and nobody's enemy. Like we're just those people that you
Mm.
find in every circle because we just knew we're too young for clusters and we're too young for cliques and we're too young for
Yeah.
like I was just like, I'm going to go hang with those people you guys are calling boring. I'm gonna go hang with the people that you're calling nerds. I'm gonna go hang with the people that you're calling cool. I'm gonna go hang with the people that are quiet. I have every type of friend. And guess what, Daniel? Even till date, I have every type of friend. I'm the person that can be friends with anybody. Even when I came to community college and I was playing football, I remember joining something. People will be very amazed, but I joined medieval theater where we would go and
Mm.
fight on the field like wearing like King Arthur's, because I thought, that's cool. Yeah, we're going there, like, and I made friends and I started learning about
Yeah.
anime and all these like, comics. But that's the thing. I can look back and say I've had the fullness of experience. And when you have the fullness of experience, by the time you consolidate everything and you take what you want and you don't take what you don't want, you have a better
Mm.
chance at life compared to people that are
Yeah.
only stuck on one route. But when you're
Yeah.
open-minded, when you have the fullness of what life has to offer, you've experienced education in the fullness of what it is. Because even beyond
Right.
the school borders and the school walls, education is life.
Mm.
Education is your neighbor. Education is the family friends you grew up with. Education is the spouse. Education is all your
Mm.
talking stages and situationships.
Because
Education
it's
is,
teaching
yes,
you.
education is the bad friends. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this conversation so far, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to comment your thoughts below and please subscribe. And don't forget to click that notification bell so that you're reminded every single Thursday for a new upload.
What did you want to be when you were younger? So when you were like in secondary school, did you know what you wanted to be?
Are you ready for this? I wanted to be a museum curator,
Okay.
curating experiences in museums. Why did I like that? Because every time I would
Interesting.
travel for a holiday, I would enjoy going to museums and enjoy going to like, all these places. We would travel with our family friends out of the country to France, to Italy. And half of the summer, you're going to museum after museum. Louvre. Before I was 17, I had seen what Peter's Basilica looked like. So I loved art. I loved architecture. But then when I was in senior secondary school, I knew that further maths were not my thing. So I was like, I can't be an architect. And then because I was so confident and I loved to argue and I was always involved, people would say, Jennifer, you'll make a good lawyer. But I knew that people were really saying that because, I didn't have to argue. But by the time I got
Yeah.
into university and I tried free law, I was like, this is boring. Why am I? And guess what? That consciousness has always been there because I said, why am I judging someone else? Who am I? Who the hell am I to sit down based on allocations, papers, and a jury to tell somebody that they're guilty? God has delivered me freely. Why would I go put it? I was like, nah, that's not for me. So are you seeing that even with character, instead of law, I went into humanitarian services. Instead of being
Yeah.
against, I went for the for. So all these experiences come from what you've gotten in childhood and what you've experienced in school, because that's the environment that shapes.
Yeah, I think you're giving us a real big picture on what your upbringing was like. And I hope that you recognize this is very privileged,
Yeah.
the experiences that you've had, because even as a sociologist, there's a lot of research that shows, middle class families are able to really enhance their children academically because they're able to give them experiences where the experiences that they have outside of school are even able to feed into the knowledge that they need for school.
So growing up, my brothers the eldest is 4 years older than me. The second one is 2 years older than me. Then I'm the third and last. And I think that my dad was also very interesting in terms of carrying me along, especially when it came to things about family, culture, which is interesting because that's what you do to boys, not the girl. But because how they say daughters are close to their dad, my dad, I was like my dad's handbag. And also my mom's handbag too. I have a very good balance with my parents, which is quite interesting. And my dad would take me to things like village occasion. I think I'm the only child of my dad that really got interested in like, hey, how does our community work and culture? I would follow my dad to like abattoirs to go kill goats for Christmas holidays and Easter holidays. So I had the experience of the grassroots early. I interacted with the village, my cousins, family members that didn't grow up the way we grew up. So that's where I actually thought I learned my humility. That's where the humility stance came from. Where I would go stay over with family members that didn't have as much as we did. But one thing that I knew was that we had respect, that we had honor. And that's why I even learned my soft skills by serving even within the family with people that didn't grow up like we did. So I think that was another thing that was good. Middle class families mixed with love and honor and culture and respect is the best balance ever. Because you give your child, I have the best of both worlds. That's why they can tell you, I can go and speak to militants. I can go and speak to area boys. I can speak to the president. I worked for a president. I've worked with community boys that are agitating in the grassroots, so it is the balance and it meets you there in the middle and it gives you the full expression of what and who you can be.
No, I love that. And I definitely agree. I think for myself, definitely having went to like a state public school and then also went to a private, I realized that it allowed for me to be able to adapt in different environments. And your story kind of reminds me when I was in Ghana. And I remember I was living in the orphanage with the kids. And I remember the driver, he would pick me up, because I was staying at a family relative with Josh who lives in like airport residential, like very nice place in Accra. And so during the weekends, I'd be in the really lovely airport residential area. And then during the week, I'd be, in the rural village. And I remember the driver, he picked me up and he was just like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "I've noticed that I'm picking you up from where I'm picking you up from and where I'm dropping you, and then I will leave you there and then I'll come back and pick you up, and I'm just seeing that where I'm taking you from and where you're going to stay, it's not, I'm confused." Just like, yeah, I'm literally like, I'm serving, I'm here, I'm teaching, I'm helping these people. And he just couldn't believe it, that you can stay in this kind of area, but then during the week, you're with literally the, underserved communities. And I think that those experiences allows for you to basically be a true advocate, because you've been and I slept in the bunk beds with the kids. Like I've been with them. I've not lived like them. Like I've Do you know what I mean? But I've had that experience to be able to advocate for those who don't have, but I'm able to also, I've been educated with those who do have to be able to actually make moves and, you know, make decisions and influence those who have to be able to give to those who don't have. So I think really similarly, I think it's amazing when you've had that exposure for both. You know, typically the Nigerian parent, the typical stereotype is, you know, your parent would want you to be a doctor or a lawyer or this kind of thing. But tell us, yeah, because you've had such an interesting experience that it would be so interesting to see how your parents were and their perspective and how it might have shaped you and your perception. Yeah.
So my mom grew up in America. My mom, growing up in America, went to high school in America, went to uni in America. She also got her master's. So she was big on education. So she already had that exposure. My dad, who came from more of like an inner city background, went to good schools as a scholarship student way back in the early 60s. Well, I would say like late 50s, before the war. So my dad was already learning things like Latin, playing cricket as a young boy. So my parents already love education. My mom has a master's. My dad is a doctor. So you can see the level of education. So my dad always tell you that if there's anything I can do for you, it's education. And my mom was so big on, in fact, my mom was very big on lessons. So like lesson teachers, after school activities. In fact, she made sure we had that. My mom was also very big on activities like swimming, sports. So by the time I was getting into senior secondary school and, a teacher, I actually talked to my teacher, my favorite teacher yesterday. He's the person that made me love sports. By the time she even like had a conversation with him and he was like, hey, I think this girl is really good in soccer. She should explore it when she gets to the States. My mom was like, hell yeah. Like, my mom followed me the first day of school here in community college to make sure I was okay with the whole soccer and everything. Like, my parents were those kind of parents. My dad is like, just as far as that's what you want. I remember every summer in university, because of that experience I have, the experiential learning, I would tell my dad, hey, I have an opportunity to go school outside the country. China, okay, go. Croatia, go. Greece, go. So by the time I was done with uni, I had already like spent every summer studying abroad. So I had diversity. Funny enough, you know, that diversity fits into my apostolic evangelist office. Like, you know, traveling around the world and preaching the gospel. It's some of those connections I made when I used to travel. Yeah.
So did you have to pay for these things? Did you have to kind of like raise money, ask your parents to cover that, or was school?
Yes.
Wow.
Half and half. Some were raised, some were scholarships, some were parents helping. But it was heavily like subsidized for me because I was a very interesting student. I was very involved in campus. A lot of teachers knew me. So they knew I was willing to maybe even be a research assistant. The school would pay half. And then my dad would be like, hey, you know, I think you should go for this one. I'll help you.
Do you feel that you were, because it sounds like you were quite empowered by your parents, actually. Do you feel that every system that you went to, do you feel like there was ever any conflict in terms of just like maybe the way you carried yourself? You were very confident, you knew what you wanted, you were such a networker. Do you feel like those environments always worked for that type of person? Or do you feel that sometimes it was like, oh, maybe boxed in a certain way, or this was quite limiting?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, the Nigerian experience, especially after university and after my master's, going back, it made me realize that Nigeria as a child and being boxed is different than Nigeria as an adult. Nigeria as a child, you move by the operations of, you move under the safety and the structures that your parents have created. So if your parents create a safe structure, you live that out. You live that out with the wisdom, you live that out with the experiences. But in Nigeria, navigating it as an adult is a different dimension. It's you dealing with social peer pressure groups, you're dealing with religion, you're dealing with patterns, you're dealing with systems, you are dealing with things that have no blueprints. So you have to create your own blueprints and regulate yourself based on the life that you want to live. And it's crazy because you have to tweak and formate yourself. And even situations where you have to douse down what you come with, what you have, the fullness of it. So people don't say you're doing so much or you're doing so little. So people don't say, who do you think you are? So people don't say, why are you so saucy? Or why do you have this? And you're just like, wow, you know, it is what it is. It's an experience. But I think I needed that because in the beauty of systems like that, if you choose and allow me to digress and go into the fullness of myself, which is kingdom, if you choose the fruits of the spirit, it guides you. You learn forgiveness, you learn forbearance, you learn long suffering, you learn patience. it guides you, and then you realize that you don't deal with human beings, you deal with spirits. You shape your journey with the wisdom that the Lord has given you, and you act accordingly. I feel like the Lord took me through different levels of perfection. He will make you deal with things like offense. He will make you deal with things like hustling, and then that hustle is not the culture. You operate from rest. He will teach you things like
Yes,
confidence. He
so
will teach
good.
you things like being steadfast in service and
Yeah.
assignment. He will teach you community and what it takes to be in community and to live within community and to serve in community.
I love what you just said because it's quite similar to Josh. When I had Josh on, and he was talking about how when he went to his school in Nigeria, and he was saying how like you can talk back even when the teacher was wrong, right? And we kind of looked at it as, even though it's limiting, in the UK, they kind of encourage you to be critical thinking and you can talk back respectfully, but it does teach you how to handle yourself with authority. It teaches you on, okay, how am I going to respond when I'm with a manager who I don't think is kind or respectful? What are the fruits of the spirit that's basically going to come out through that element? Or am I going to be always in conflict? So I feel like even though environments like Nigeria have been seen to be quite limiting, I guess it's also quite good because in a way it shapes you to know like, okay, how are you going to respond in these kind of situations? So I guess that's similar to experience. Looking back then to, to all the great things that you're doing now, with Give Back Nigeria, with your ministry, with policy, do you feel that in terms of school preparing you for it, what do you think maybe are the few things that you think, these are the key things that helped me in what I do right now, and this is how school helped me?
It's definitely the concentration, confidence, thinking capacity, thinking skills, the way school brings out the learner in you. And that's it, because school taught me how to be teachable. School taught me how network oh yeah, let me say it this way, network is my net worth. Because from school, I learned that who you associate with will matter. Not just even matters for material things, it matters for what is eternally in you. If you spend your time with people that don't read, you will come out an interesting student.
Okay.
The people that played around in schools and were circles of low vibrations, they came out as low vibration individuals. When you're someone who wants to experience the fullness of what school can give, you prepare yourself ahead of time. School prepares you for the person you will be. So sometimes people say, "Oh, all the things we studied in school, I'm not using it in life." I said, no. You may not be using the algebra equations, but you will be using the thinking capacity. Let me not cry. Let me get this done. Let me show up when it's time. Let me be timely. Let me be conscious. Let me be punctual. These things feed out in your life. Even the way you dealt with conflict. I went to boarding school. There was a lot of conflict. And it was a boarding school I learned how to forgive. It will feed out in your life. So school is very, very experiential, even when it comes to the educative aspect. That's why I'm always big on what do you learn. So today, social studies is still one of my favorite topics. And it's funny how you study sociology. My mom also studied sociology. And social studies taught me how to be ready for the world. Social studies will teach us about current affairs. In the social studies, I learned how to love the news. Literature taught me English. Yeah. Literature made me someone who loved to read. When I can identify simile, hyperbole, all that good stuff. It's literature. Or is it even English and how to write proper essays and how to write proper letters? Letters we still write when we are, doing fundraising for NGO.
Right?
Mathematics. Yes, mathematics. You need it. In fact, I still have some sort of nightmares for maths because maths was something. But I conquered maths and I'm happy. I used to be so scared of maths. But then was later towards senior secondary school, I realized that it wasn't that I was scared of maths. I just appreciated quantitative and qualitative analysis better. So I like data. So I would do bad in math in elementary school, but I did so well in qualitative. So I'm a thinker. So I learned that early that I like to think. And when I think, I process and I create and I, disperse. So school taught me all these things. So I always tell people school is essential. I know that we're now in a generation where everybody wants to do their thing and nobody can control me and emotions are high. But school also will teach you emotional intelligence and emotional regulation and control. You must. Emotional intelligence has become a life skill. Once mental health went high, emotional intelligence, the need for it went high.
Yeah.
So that's the balance.
That's amazing. And I definitely agree. I think my last question for you is for those people who might be listening and thinking, well, I want to be able to enhance my network, but the type of school that I go to, the kind of environment that I'm in, like, I don't meet those kind of, middle class, upper class people. I don't meet all these people. What would you say is a way to kind of maximize and capitalize on that for people that are listening to you and thinking, okay, but I didn't come from a family where they can take me on trips or where they can expose me to this and that and this and that. What do you think could be useful for them?
Good. Start where you are. Volunteer. The young girls at university, maybe you're listening to this from Nigeria, join an ushering group, usher in events. Go to conferences. When school is having annual conferences, attend. Talk to a teacher. Where can I help you, sir? You're researching, or maybe you're in agriculture. He's researching agriculture in the north. Hey, talk to your professor that you like to research. Attend events. Join social media lives. Volunteering is such a big thing. I don't know. Volunteering, we need a podcast for that in its own. Because volunteering is where I met myself. It's even through volunteering that I knew that I like to travel. You have to start where you are. I even tell people, like, even if it's volunteering in your local church. Okay, let me show you an example. Your local church, you're volunteering, maybe you want to be an usher, a protocol member, welfare. When your church is doing big conferences, annual conferences, they invite all these guest speakers. You get to interact with the guest speakers, even in things like the green room. They even get to impart you. They get to talk to you. You get one-on-one coaching. Look for a mentor. Look for a local mentor. The auntie down the street, that big auntie or big uncle in church, your mother's friend, your mother's your cousin. Even internships. You have an uncle that has a business. Uncle, can I intern this holiday? Like, there are things to do. But I think because of social media and comparison, everybody wants to start big. If you're someone who loves to learn and you allow yourself to be informed by things around you, you're enjoying the process of becoming. And that's it.
Yeah. And that's so true, because I think the more that we are getting social media and in this fast paced environment, I just feel like the more that we just don't enjoy the process anymore. Like, we just want things now, quick. We want the end goal. So I love the fact that you're reminding us that actually it's about the process, it's about the journey. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Jen, it's been amazing having you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
If you enjoyed this conversation, then do not forget to subscribe. Join the Education Effect family, and I can't wait to see you with my next guest.